She was abandoned after 11 years of trying to have a child. Her husband walked out, leaving her alone with nothing but shame and village gossip. But 2 months later, she discovered something impossible. She was pregnant. And what happened next would shock an entire community and become a story told for generations. This is the true story of Nnena, a woman who waited 11 years for motherhood, was left behind in her darkest hour, and gave birth to a miracle so rare that most people will never witness it in their lifetime. Nnena had been married to Okafor for over a decade. In the beginning, their marriage was filled with love and hope. Okafor was gentle, attentive, and supportive. They lived in a small village where everyone knew everyone's business, and they had dreamed of filling their compound with the sounds of children playing and laughing. But as the years passed, that dream remained just that. A dream. Month after month, Nnena hoped. Month after month, her hope was crushed. The women at the village well began to whisper. At first, the whispers were quiet, sympathetic even. But as year 3 turned into year 5, and year 5 turned into year 8, the whispers grew louder and crueler. They said she was cursed. They said she carried a shadow instead of a child. Some claimed she had offended the ancestors. Others suggested she had been born under a bad moon. The accusations varied, but the message was always the same. Something was wrong with Nnena. The pain of childlessness is a unique kind of suffering. It's not just the absence of something. It's the presence of constant reminders everywhere you look. Every baby strapped to a mother's back at the market. Every child running through the village square. Every pregnant woman walking past with that unmistakable glow. Each one was a knife twisting deeper into Nnena's heart. But perhaps nothing hurt more than watching her husband slowly withdraw from her. Okafor, who had once held her hand and promised that their time would come, began to grow distant. He stopped looking at her with the same warmth. His touches became rare. Their conversations grew shorter, colder. The silence between them expanded until it filled every corner of their home. By year 11, the tension had become unbearable. Arguments erupted over small things. A burned meal. A forgotten errand. But they both knew these weren't really about food or chores. They were about the unspoken disappointment that hung between them like thick smoke. One night, after a particularly heated argument, Okafor said the words that would shatter Nnena's world completely. He stood by the doorway, his face half hidden in shadow, and spoke in a voice that was equal parts exhaustion and resignation. I can't keep waiting for a miracle that may never come. Before dawn the next morning, he was gone. No goodbye. No explanation beyond those terrible words from the night before. Just an empty space where her husband used to be. Nnena collapsed on the floor of their compound and wept. She wept for the children she never had. She wept for the marriage that had crumbled under the weight of disappointment. She wept for the loneliness that now stretched endlessly before her. She felt abandoned not just by her husband, but by fate itself. The village, of course, had much to say about Okafor's departure. Some blamed Nnena entirely. Others sympathized but agreed that a man could only wait so long. A few of the older women clucked their tongues and said this was what happened when a woman couldn't fulfill her purpose. The judgment was heavy and constant. But Nnena had no choice except to continue living. She still needed to eat. She still needed to work. So she forced herself out of bed each morning and went about the business of survival. She tended her small garden, harvested cassava, and did odd jobs for neighbors who would hire her. 2 months passed in this gray, hollow existence. 2 months of going through motions, of feeling like a ghost in her own life. Then one afternoon, while gathering cassava behind her compound, something strange happened. The world suddenly tilted. Nnena's vision blurred and her knees buckled. She grabbed onto a nearby tree to steady herself, her heart pounding in her chest. Mom Nkechi, her elderly neighbor, had been watching from her own compound. The old woman hurried over as fast as her aged legs could carry her. "Child, what's wrong? You look pale as moonlight." Nnena tried to brush it off. "Just tired. The heat, probably." But Mama Nkechi wasn't convinced. She had seen too many women in her long life to miss certain signs. You need to go to the clinic today. I won't hear any arguments. Nnena wanted to refuse, but another wave of dizziness made the decision for her. She allowed Mama Nkechi to help her to the small health clinic at the edge of the village. The nurse was a middle-aged woman named Chioma who had delivered half the babies in the surrounding villages. She took one look at Nnena and immediately began asking questions. When was your last cycle? Have you been feeling nauseous? Any changes in appetite? Nnena answered mechanically, not really paying attention. She was certain this was just exhaustion, stress, maybe some illness from bad water. So when Nurse Chioma ran a quick test and then looked up with a soft smile, Nnena wasn't prepared for what came next. You're pregnant. About 2 months along. The words hung in the air like something impossible. Nnena stared at the nurse, unable to process what she'd just heard. That's not possible. But even as she said it, the timeline clicked into place in her mind. 2 months. Okafor had left 2 months ago. Which meant the baby had been conceived just before he walked out. Just before he gave up on their miracle. Nina's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. Life. After 11 years of emptiness, life had finally taken root inside her. And Okafor would never know because he was gone. The emotions that crashed over her were complex and overwhelming. Joy that she was finally pregnant. Grief that her husband wasn't there to share it. Anger that he had left just before this miracle occurred. Fear about facing pregnancy and motherhood alone. All of it swirled together until she didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she did both. Mama Nkechi, who had accompanied her to the clinic, wrapped her arms around Nnena and held her as she shook with the force of these conflicting emotions. You see, child? Grace arrives in its own time. Always in its own time. Word of Nnena's pregnancy spread through the village with the speed that only gossip can achieve. The same women who had whispered about her barrenness now whispered about her pregnancy. Some were genuinely happy for her. Others were skeptical. A few cruel voices suggested the baby couldn't possibly be Okafor's since he had left 2 months ago, but those voices were quickly silenced by people who could count and knew the timing made perfect sense. As the weeks passed, Nnena's pregnancy progressed. But something unusual began to happen. By her 3rd month, she was already showing more than most women at that stage. By her 5th month, her belly had swollen to a size that made people stop and stare. The women at the market began speculating loudly whenever Nnena passed. That's not one baby. Has to be twins. I've seen twin pregnancies. That looks like 3, maybe 4. The theories flew fast and wild. Some said she was further along than she thought. Others insisted there were definitely multiple babies. A few superstitious souls whispered about spirits and supernatural explanations, though these were usually dismissed by the more practical villagers. Nnena herself didn't know what to think. She just knew that her body was expanding at an alarming rate and that carrying this pregnancy was becoming increasingly difficult. The weight pressed against her spine. Her legs ached constantly. Simple tasks that used to take minutes now took much longer. But Nnena was determined not to be defeated. She had survived 11 years of childlessness. She had survived abandonment. She would survive this too. So despite the growing burden she carried, she continued to work. She harvested vegetables under the brutal sun, sweat pouring down her face and soaking her clothes. She walked to the well and back, though each trip became slower and more laborious. She tended her goats even when bending over made her dizzy. Mama Nkechi watched with increasing concern. Nnena, you must rest more. Your body is telling you to slow down. But Nnena would shake her head stubbornly. If motherhood requires strength, then I will give all of mine. I won't let this baby see a weak mother. What she didn't say out loud was that the work helped distract her from the loneliness. From the empty space beside her where a husband should be. From the fear of facing childbirth alone. As long as she kept moving, kept working, she didn't have to think about any of that. By the 7th month, however, her body finally forced the issue. Nnena's legs could barely support the massive weight of her belly. She became breathless from the slightest exertion. The baby, or babies, or whatever was growing inside her, pressed against every organ, making even breathing a conscious effort. She finally surrendered to her body's demands and stopped working. She spent her days sitting by the window of her small home, one hand always resting on her belly, feeling the constant movement inside. And there was so much movement. Kicks and turns and rolls that seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if multiple tiny fighters were battling for space. The village watched her compound with fascination bordering on obsession. Everyone had a theory. Everyone wanted to be there when the truth was finally revealed. Women brought her food and sat with her, partly out of kindness and partly because they wanted to be part of whatever extraordinary event was clearly coming. Then came the night that would change everything. The night the miracle would finally reveal itself. Heavy rain began falling just as the sun set. It wasn't the gentle rain that farmers pray for. It was a torrential downpour that hammered the tin roofs and turned the dirt roads into rivers of mud. Thunder rolled across the sky like the drums of heaven. And in the middle of this storm, Nnenna's labor began. The first contraction hit like a fist to her abdomen. She gasped and gripped the edge of her sleeping mat. Before she could catch her breath, another came. Then another. They were coming fast, much faster than they should for a first birth. Mom Nkechi, who had insisted on staying with Nnena as her due date approached, immediately sent her grandson running through the rain to fetch the midwife. The midwife, a seasoned woman named Nnena who had delivered hundreds of babies over her career, arrived soaked to the bone but ready to work. She examined Nnena quickly, and her eyes widened slightly, though she kept her voice calm and professional. This baby is coming fast. Very fast. What happened next would become the stuff of legend. Nnena worked by the flickering light of candles and kerosene lamps, her experienced hands steady even as her mind raced. Nnena pushed with every ounce of strength she had left, her screams mixing with the sound of thunder outside. Then the first baby emerged. A cry pierced the air, high and strong. Nnena handed the infant to Mom Nkechi to clean and wrap. But before anyone could celebrate, Nnena cried out again. Her body was still contracting. Another baby was coming. Nnenna's hands moved quickly, expertly, and moments later a second infant entered the world, wailing just as loudly as the first. Twins. The village had been right. But the labor wasn't stopping. A third baby. Nnenna's calm demeanor cracked slightly, her eyes growing wide. She called out for Mom Nkechi to help, her voice urgent now. A fourth baby. The small room filled with the sound of newborn cries, multiple tiny voices joining in an unplanned chorus. And then, impossibly, a fifth. Nnena sat back on her heels, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at the 5 infants now filling the room with their crying. 5. 5 babies. Her voice came out in a whisper thick with awe and disbelief. Quintuplets. 5 children. I've heard of such things, but never. I've never seen it with my own eyes. Nnena lay exhausted on her mat, barely conscious but aware enough to hear the word. 5. She had given birth to 5 babies. The woman who had been called barren, who had been mocked and pitted, who had been abandoned because she couldn't produce even one child, had just given birth to 5 at once. Mama Nkechi moved efficiently between the infants, cleaning them, wrapping them in whatever cloths could be found, checking each one for signs of distress. Miraculously, all 5 appeared healthy. Small, yes, but breathing strongly, crying loudly, fighting for life with the determination of warriors. 3 boys and 2 girls. 5 perfect, impossible miracles. By morning, despite the rain still falling steadily, word had begun to spread. One of Mama Nkechi's grandsons ran to tell his mother. She told her neighbor. That neighbor told someone at the market. By afternoon, when the rain finally stopped, the entire village knew. By evening, neighboring villages had heard. By the next day, the news had traveled to towns many miles away. People came from all directions to see for themselves. They crowded around Nnena's compound, craning their necks for a glimpse of the miracle babies. The woman who had once been whispered about in mockery was now spoken of with reverence and wonder. Nnena lay on her mat, surrounded by 5 tiny bodies that needed constant attention. They nursed in rotation because she couldn't feed all 5 at once. They cried at different times, meaning she got almost no sleep. They needed to be changed, comforted, held, watched constantly. It was overwhelming and exhausting and more work than Nnena had ever imagined. But as she looked at their tiny faces, their miniature fingers that gripped her own, their eyes that were just beginning to focus, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Completeness. Purpose. Joy. The news eventually reached Okafor. He was staying in a town 3 days' journey away, working as a laborer and trying to forget the life he'd left behind. When a traveler casually mentioned the miracle birth in Okafor's home village, of a woman named Nnena who had given birth to 5 babies at once, Okafor felt like he'd been struck by lightning. 5 babies. 5 children. The wife he had abandoned, the woman he had given up on, had experienced the most extraordinary miracle imaginable. And he hadn't been there. He had walked away just before Grace arrived. The guilt hit him like a physical blow. He had failed her. When she needed him most, when the burden of childlessness had been heaviest, he had run away. He had chosen his own comfort over commitment to his wife. And now she had borne 5 children alone, without him, while he had been off feeling sorry for himself. For 3 weeks, Okafor wrestled with what to do. Part of him was afraid to return. He had no right to these children. He had abandoned their mother. What claim could he possibly make now? Another part of him knew that regardless of his fears, he had to face what he had done. He had to at least try to make amends, even if Nnena never forgave him. Finally, he gathered his few belongings and made the long journey home. With each mile that passed, his stomach twisted tighter with anxiety and shame. What would he say? How could he possibly explain or justify leaving her? When he finally arrived at the compound, he stood at the entrance for a long moment, unable to move forward. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He could hear sounds from inside. Babies crying. A woman's voice, Nnena's voice, singing softly. He took a deep breath and stepped into the courtyard. Nnena was sitting on a low stool, one baby strapped to her back, another cradled in her arms, while 3 more lay in a large woven basket nearby, 2 sleeping and 1 staring up at the darkening sky with wide, wondering eyes. She looked up and saw him. Her entire body went rigid. The baby in her arms sensed the sudden tension and began to fuss. Nnena's eyes, which had once looked at Okafor with love, now looked at him with something much harder. Wariness. Anger. Pain. Okafor's legs felt weak. He took a hesitant step forward, then dropped to his knees on the hard-packed earth of the courtyard. His voice cracked when he spoke. Nnena, I failed you. I was weak when you needed strength. I abandoned you when I should have held you closer. When the waiting became difficult, I ran away like a coward. Tears began streaming down his face. You gave birth to 5 children. 5. And I wasn't there. I should have been there. I should have been holding your hand, supporting you, helping you. Instead, you went through it alone because I couldn't handle a burden that you carried with Grace for 11 years. He looked up at her, his face wet with tears and twisted with shame. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I'm asking for it anyway. Please, Nnena. Please give me a chance to make this right. To be the husband I should have been. To be a father to these children. Silence stretched between them. The only sounds were the babies, one crying softly, the others breathing in that rapid, delicate way that newborns do. A light breeze rustled the leaves of the mango tree that grew at the edge of the compound. Nnena looked down at the infant in her arms, then at the 3 in the basket, then felt the weight of the one on her back. These 5 children were hers. She had carried them. Birthed them. Survived. All without him. She had proven to herself and everyone else that she was strong enough to do this alone. But as she looked at Okafor kneeling before her, broken and repentant, she thought about what lay ahead. 5 children to raise. 5 mouths to feed. 5 lives to guide. Could she really do all of that alone? Did she want to? More importantly, she thought about the capacity for forgiveness. About second chances. About whether love could be rebuilt after being shattered. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. You left when the burden felt too heavy to carry, Okafor. But these children, they will need more than one parent to carry them through life. She paused, her eyes meeting his directly. I don't forgive you easily. Trust is not a gift I can give you in a single moment. It's something you'll have to earn back slowly, painfully, through action, not words. But if you're willing to stay, truly stay, through sickness and hunger and sleepless nights and every hardship that will come, then we will see if you deserve to be their father. It wasn't absolution. It wasn't even really forgiveness yet. But it was a door left slightly open. An opportunity, narrow and conditional, but real. Okafor nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He stood slowly and looked at the 5 babies, really looked at them for the first time. His children. Children who existed because of a grace that had arrived just after he stopped believing in it. The road to redemption was long and difficult. Okafor didn't just stay. He worked. He woke before dawn to fetch water so Nnena could sleep an extra hour. He rebuilt the crumbling sections of their compound wall. He took on extra labor in neighboring farms, bringing home yams, dried fish, and palm oil to feed his growing family. He learned to change soiled cloths, gagging at first but eventually becoming efficient at it. He learned to rock crying babies in the middle of the night, pacing back and forth until they settled. He learned to cook simple meals when Nnena was too exhausted to stand. His hands, which had grown soft during his months away, became calloused and rough again from honest work. Nnena watched all of this with guarded eyes. She didn't make it easy for him. Why should she? He had abandoned her. Left her to face her greatest trial alone. Words were cheap. Only consistent action over time could begin to repair what had been broken. But slowly, painfully slowly, something began to shift. There were small moments. A shared laugh when one of the babies made a particularly funny expression. A grateful nod when Okafor finished a difficult task without being asked. A night when they worked side by side bathing the 5 infants, moving in sync like partners who knew each other's rhythms. One evening, they both reached for the same crying child and their hands touched. Neither pulled away immediately. They stood there for a moment, hands touching, the baby wailing between them, and something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of it. The village, which loved a good story, watched this reconciliation with interest. The same people who had whispered about Nnena's barrenness, then gossiped about Okafor's abandonment, now talked about his return and redemption. Some approved. Others remained skeptical. But most agreed that the man seemed genuinely changed. The quintuplets grew, as all babies do. They were small but healthy, each one developing their own personality. One boy was always hungry, crying louder than the others when feeding time came. One girl was calmer, content to lie and observe the world with wise eyes. Another boy was restless, always moving his tiny limbs. The other girls seemed to smile more than the rest, even at that early age. And the 5th child, the last born, was the smallest but perhaps the most determined, fighting hardest for every feeding. Raising 5 infants simultaneously was chaos. There was no other word for it. The compound was constantly filled with crying, feeding, changing, and precious little sleep. But there was also laughter. There was wonder. There was the profound satisfaction of watching 5 tiny humans grow stronger each day. Neighbors and even strangers continued to help. Women brought food. Men helped repair things around the compound. The village that had once judged Nnena now rallied around her family. The quintuplets belonged not just to Nnena and Okafor, but in some way to the entire community. They were living proof that miracles could happen even in the most unlikely circumstances. Years passed. The quintuplets learned to crawl, then walk, then run. They became 5 distinct individuals, each with their own dreams and temperaments, but bound together by the extraordinary circumstances of their birth. The compound that had once been marked by silence and sorrow was now constantly alive with noise and motion. Nnena and Okafor's marriage, which had been shattered and carefully, painfully pieced back together, grew stronger. It would never be the same as it was before. The cracks were still visible if you looked closely. But perhaps it was better this way. They both knew now that commitment meant staying even when things were difficult, especially when things were difficult. One afternoon, 5 years after the miraculous birth, Nnena stood at her vegetable stall in the marketplace. The quintuplets, now energetic and curious 5-year-olds, ran through the crowded market together, chasing each other between the stalls. 3 boys and 2 girls, each one strong and healthy and full of life. Okafor stood beside Nnena, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. His presence was steady now, reliable. The man who had run away when things got hard had transformed into someone who stayed, who worked, who loved actively rather than passively. Mom and Kechi, now even older and moving more slowly but still sharp as ever, shuffled past the stall. She stopped and smiled at the scene before her. 5 children playing together, their parents watching over them with equal parts exhaustion and love. "Look at what your patience has grown, Nnena," the old woman said, her voice warm with affection. Nnena smiled, her eyes following her children as they wove between market stalls. "I learned something important, Mama. Grace doesn't arrive early or late. It comes exactly when it's meant to. And when it finally comes, it doesn't just fill the emptiness. It overflows." She watched her 5 miracles run and play, each one a testament to endurance, faith, and the mysterious timing of blessings. The woman who had once been called barren was now mother to 5. The marriage that had been broken had been rebuilt, stronger in some ways for having been tested and survived. And the village that had once spoken her name with pity and mockery now spoke it with respect and wonder. Nnena's story became a legend told at weddings and festivals, shared with young couples facing their own struggles, whispered to women who were losing hope. Because sometimes the miracle you've been waiting for doesn't arrive when you expect it. Sometimes it comes after you've been abandoned, after you've hit your lowest point, after you've learned to survive on your own strength. And sometimes, when grace finally arrives, it doesn't come as a gentle rain. It comes as a flood, overwhelming and abundant, 5 times more than you ever imagined, transforming not just your life but the lives of everyone around you. This is the story of Nnena. A story of waiting, of abandonment, of miraculous blessing, and of forgiveness. A story that reminds us that the timing of grace is not ours to control, but when it arrives, it changes everything. If Nnena's story touched your heart, if it reminded you that miracles can happen even after years of waiting, even after abandonment, even when all hope seems lost, then do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. It tells me you want to hear more stories like this. Stories of real people facing impossible odds and finding hope on the other side. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Click that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I share powerful true stories like Nnena's every single week. Stories that will make you believe in second chances, in divine timing, and in the strength of the human spirit. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever experienced a blessing that arrived at exactly the right moment, even if it felt late? Have you ever had to forgive someone who abandoned you when you needed them most? Share your story. This community is built on real experiences and real hope, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their waiting isn't in vain. Send it to that friend who's struggling with disappointment. Post it to your story for that family member who's lost hope. Nnena's miracle might just be the encouragement someone desperately needs right now. If you love Nnena's story, you'll love that one too. Thank you for watching, thank you for being a part of this community, and remember your miracle can just be around the corner. Don't give up. Grace is coming.